Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome my listeners and viewers in the United States and all around the world. I am Vince Rocco, and it is Tuesday in New York City, so let's go behind the headlines and get the real story. But first, this is Talking New York Real Estate. And up front today, the big thaw in Manhattan real estate refers to a significant change or shift in the real estate market in Manhattan, particularly in terms of property prices and demand. It suggests a decrease in prices or a relaxation of a competitive market conditions that were previously prevalent, or where there is a decrease in property prices due to various factors such as oversupply, economic downturn, or changing market dynamics. It may also refer to a shift in demand where buyers have more negotiating power and can find better deals in the market. The big thaw in Manhattan real estate can be seen as an opportunity for buyers and investors to enter the market at a more favorable time, as lower prices or increased inventory create a more buyer-friendly environment. However, it may also indicate challenges for sellers and developers who may need to adjust their pricing strategy or marketing efforts to attract buyers. It really is all about everyone's opinion, I guess. We will discuss and we will have all that and so much more as Talking New York Real Estate gets underway on this very busy Tuesday morning. And in the news this morning on Wednesday, June 12th at 9 a.m. in New York City, the New York City Council will be holding a hearing to consider legislation that will have a significant impact on residential rental broker commissions. The legislation known as Intro 360 would drastically change the residential rental market by eliminating the ability to negotiate who pays a commission, leading to a greater confusion, less transparency, and additional costs for many renters. Councilmember Chayasi is leading this bill, and it needs to be stopped. To stop the bill, we must sign up and join us at City Hall on the 12th and ensure that agents' voices are heard. Mr. Rossi has been invited to this program several times but has yet to respond. And Drew Barrymore has sold her place in Sagaponack only 3 weeks after listing her estate, according to the New York Post. The deal has yet to close, so the buyer's identity and the purchase price are unclear, but Barrymore was asking $8.5 million. She purchased the home in 2019 for $5.5 million and then did an extensive remodeling on the 6,850 square foot century-old house. And a 2-block stretch of historic homes in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn could become New York's next historic district. The Landmarks Preservation Commission last week voted to calendar the proposed Willoughby Hart Historic District, which includes 2 blocks of intact 19th century old row houses between Marcy and Nordstrom Avenues. Built primarily in the neo-Grec style between 1870s and 1880s, the 150-year-old homes are architecturally cohesive and reflect a period of Brooklyn's transformation from farmland to residential, according to the commission. And finally, the Upper West Side has a new tallest tower. This week, the residential skyscraper at 50 West 66th Street reached its pinnacle height of 775 feet, officially taking the title from its 52-story neighbor, 200 Amsterdam Avenue. Developed by Extell Development Company, the building includes 127 condo units and 50,000 square feet of amenities. And with me today are Michael Holt from Compass, David Rodriguez, Loan Depot Finance, Matt Mellinger from Brown Harris Stevens, and Anna Shagaloff, also from Brown Harris Stevens.
This beautiful set here at Studio 1873 is brought to you by the Everset. The Everset provides full-service staging and furniture rental solutions in the New York area. For more information, please visit us at staging.theeverset.com or email us at staging@theeverset.com to request a free proposal.
All right, everybody, we are back. So today we're going to talk about the big thaw, and I get a kick out of that. I love the title, and Michael's here. He's going to explain it for us. But the big thaw in Manhattan real estate. So we've been in a very questionable market the last couple of years, either high, either low, either stagnant, either dead. Who says it's a buyer's market? Who says it's a seller's market? I don't know where we are, and hopefully at the end of this conversation with my experts here today, we're going to find out. Michael, let's start with you. We're talking about, as I said before, the big thaw with a potential shift back towards sellers, according to an article you wrote recently. But there are many people out there who are suggesting that maybe that's true. However, it looks more like we're getting into a buyer's market as we thaw, because pricing is still not where it's supposed to be. Inventory is still not where it's supposed to be. What are your thoughts on this, or how our market is thawing out, for lack of a better phrase, or changing? Better said.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here. You know, you were right. I'm going to echo what you said. It is a very funky market out there. It has been tricky for a lot of people, even agents. You know, even agents have come to me and just asked me, hey, what do you feel that's going on in the market? So here's the interesting thing, right? You have to always go by the rule of supply and demand. And the interesting thing is that we have been short in supply. And it has very well been a buyer's market for some time. Like sellers, it's been very painful for sellers the past couple of years. But the interesting thing is that in Manhattan or really anywhere, it's like we all have our seasons, right? In Manhattan, by far our best season of the year.
Seasons of change.
Yeah. Well, by far the best season is always generally, historically, it's spring. And so you have to think to yourself, okay, if I have limited inventory and then I have my best market coming up, that's the whole title where it came about, is like, that's the big thaw. Is this going to finally shift back to the sellers? Will they finally get some leverage? Will the buyers finally jump in and act? And it's amazing because that was towards leading up in the beginning of spring, and now here we are, fast forward, and that didn't happen. It didn't happen. There was a little bit of activity, but there wasn't enough. Historically speaking, I mean, we've had the number of sales have declined 19 out of 21 months, I believe, with the stats that I had read. So there's just not as many deals as there was in the past. You know, that said, I think if you are new inventory, I can tell you this much because I'm working with a lot of buyers, that they're getting a hard look. Like anybody who's priced right now, I think they're going to do very well. And if you're not, I believe the market's going to let you know like pretty quickly. You're going to know and how you stand in pricing.
Yeah, Matt was talking about pricing a little while ago before we got on the air, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But let me ask you this. So what are the confluence of factors that could possibly be helping to shift the market in any direction? Is it price? I mean, is it only price, or is it, the elephant in the room? And we'll talk to our banker in a minute. The interest rates. I mean,
right.
what are some of these factors that can be looked at in ways that we can positively change our market?
Yeah, so the biggest one is interest rates, as you said. Perfect example, towards the beginning of the year, which is ironic because the winter is notoriously our worst market, but you had seen the rates dip a little bit and you saw a jump in activity, which was quite interesting. So it showed a little bit of hope. And then now when the rates kind of ticked up again, you saw market activity slow. And seeing where we are now, I actually wrote down a stat because I wanted to share it with you guys, and I can't remember everything right, but I really wanted to do this. So the gap between current market activity and typical season levels, right? So how it normally is and where it's currently at, right? How it relates to each other. So it was 20% below in December. So December usually had 20% more deals, okay? And then this past year, 20% less, all right? And then as rates dipped, okay, January, February started to get more in towards this year, it was only 7% away. So it's like, okay, maybe the market is starting to improve here, but now the deficit widened again up to 12%. So that honestly is correlated with rates. So I do think like one of the biggest factors is the interest rate. I think it does have a huge impact, especially on first-time buyers, especially because a lot of inventory in New York City is co-ops. And so now you have to worry about not just getting approved for a loan, but also getting approved by a co-op board. And forget it if it needs renovations, because then the board looks at that as well, and it impacts your liquidity and buying power. So there's definitely a number of factors, but I think the interest rate is the biggest one.
We're going to talk to David about that in a second, plus a few more financial things. But I was talking to our chief economist, Greg Heim, a little while ago before the show started, and he was telling me that in the contract status report that he puts out every week, that I'm addicted to all of his reports, by the way, and send them out to all my distribution list. But contracts signed last week were very, very low and really one of the worst weeks on record. So, guys, who are feet on the street, based on what Michael just said, based on what we know the market has been, why so bad in the last week? What is holding buyers back from signing contracts and moving forward? What's the deal? What's their trepidation?
No, you can take it. Go for it.
I mean, it's kind of a hard question to answer when you're dealing with a single week, because the last 18 to 24 months, the market does shift week to week.
Yeah.
I mean, there are weeks where the phones don't stop ringing. I'm not sitting down the entire week, and it's great. And we're cautiously optimistic that it might continue, but we know right now it's just not going to, because buyers just need to still catch their breath on the rates. I think there's travel that has set in since Memorial Day. I think people are just not really all that wowed by the inventory currently, and I think that pricing, as sensitive as it is, you almost need to. You can't price right anymore. You have to price incentivized. You have to price on the lower side to get people in the door. And oftentimes, even when you do that, you're still not getting traffic. I have listings that I sell within a week, and then I have listings that are well priced that I can't get anyone in the door, and it is mind-boggling. This is the first time in my 23 years in this business, this last 18 to 24 months, where it's you can't explain it. There's zero predictability, and I think with the early reports of interest rates dropping and all of us agents telling our sellers, now's the time, this spring is going to be crazy, and then that didn't happen, and the media outlets kind of pulled back from that, and the Feds pulled back from that. Everybody kind of hit the brakes at that point, and I'm also working with a lot of buyers, and I have a lot of listings, and the buyers are just so hesitant to commit because they don't know what the future holds.
I was going to say the word hesitation, and I just wrote it down as you're saying it, kind of sticks out to me, because I think, if you want to talk about what really the market is about today, it's about that. As you just said, even if you price things properly, even if you underprice, which I'm a big believer in underpricing to get at least, over the asking price or a little better than.
We call that incentivized pricing.
Incentivized pricing, traffic, exactly. But what I'm seeing out there too is there may be traffic out there. There may be a lot, we could be busy showing, but then here comes that word hesitation again. Well, I don't know. Should I sign the contract? Should I even make an offer? I don't know what to do. Matt, when you're facing that kind of, situation with a buyer, how do you get them over that hump of, okay, the price may be correct. It may, you may have some hesitation about X or Y, but it is really a good time to buy.
So I think it really comes down to, first, education, because people are reading stuff
Data and
constantly,
education.
and I feel that there's been sort of, I wouldn't call it a boom and bust, I'd call it more of an ebb and flow to the New York market, where, as Anna said, 1 week it's crazy, 1 week we're basically unemployed, you don't really know what's going to come, and it's sort of like, I was like, it's sort of like the boy who cried wolf. Like every time that
Ebb and flow. Okay.
there's a major market event, all of the quote unquote confidence that we've built up with our buyers and our sellers all of a sudden vanishes, and we have to start from the beginning to sort of rewind, regroup, and then move forward again.
Yeah.
I definitely think, though, that we're in everyone says, how can it be a good time to buy and a good time to sell at the same time? I think it's because we're dealing with a very nuanced and fragmented market, where, for example, if you have a gut renovated Classic 7 on West End Avenue, it's gone. It doesn't, if it's priced right, it's gone. If you have, a Park Avenue co-op that needs work, and even if it's priced well, that coupled with just the sheer burden of qualifying for a building like that, it's going to sit. Even downtown, if you have the hottest block in the West Village, but the apartment is an absolute mess and the seller refuses to do anything to even make it look presentable, it's not going to sell.
Well, as Michael said before, that your post-close liquidity, boards, especially if it's a co-op board on Park Avenue or whatever, they're looking at that stuff. And even if you have the money, even your own thoughts, well, who wants to spend $500,000 to rent? I remember the days when I renovated an entire apartment on the Upper East Side for $35,000, $40,000.
I didn't want to hear that.
Okay.
That's a countertop now.
That's a countertop today, right? We're not talking that many years ago. So that renovation today would have cost probably $400,000. Okay.
Right.
So this is what people are facing. So anything that needs work is going to be a big issue. And post-close liquidity is one of the obstacles that we as agents in this town deal with probably more than anywhere else in the world.
Oh, absolutely. The renovation factor is so off the table for so many people because they've
Correct.
already had to recalibrate their budgets to account. And I look at you; it's all your fault.
We're going to get him to talk
interest
real
rates,
soon.
Yes, I can't wait to hear that. They had to recalibrate everything for interest rates, and and monthlies have gone up tremendously, and taxes are crazy, and everyone has to recalibrate.
Insurance
that
costs.
and insurance
Yeah,
costs.
that's a
I
big
mean,
one.
all expensive living has just gone up so significantly over the last year and a half to 2 years that putting a renovation on top of it all, you need to be super confident and super liquid. And unfortunately, in the luxury market, there is a lot of liquidity, but people don't want to take on the projects.
But there's a silver lining to that, because if you can convince a seller to prepare their apartment accordingly, the premium that they stand to gain from that is exponentially higher
Right.
than it ever was.
Right.
I give you a prime example. I took a listing. It had been on and off the market for, I think, 2.5 years with 3 different brokers on Museum Mile on Fifth Avenue, but I would call it more of a flexible co-op on Fifth. It's not one of the crazy ones. The apartment it needed everything. I mean, the photos, it was very traditional. We'll call it French Tuscan chic, whatever you wanted to call it. It wasn't a modern looking apartment. And they were down to, I told them.
French Tuscan chic. That's
It was
like
a mishmash.
a confluence of
I went for Olive Garden.
a confluence of whatever.
Easy bite, real
I'm sorry to
estate.
interrupt.
I took one look at it and I said, I will list this next week and it was a beautiful Classic 6, partial park views, great doorman building. I'll list this next week for $1,995. And they looked at me like I was crazy. I was like, but let me get my team in here. We'll strip the apartment. You have to move out. We will repaint it, built-in skim coat paint. We'll redo the floors, stage it. 2-3.
Smart.
So they spent $40,000 and 4 weeks of their time. In less than a week, we had a full ass cash offer. This is the magic not only of staging, but creating, I won't say it's an illusion, but sort of giving the buyer a head start on what they're looking at as an insurmountable project for them. That incentive is what ultimately helps sell apartments in this market. You're sort of giving the buyer a leg up and giving them sort of a head start.
I totally agree.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. So, Michael, what economic indicators are suggesting that the Manhattan real estate market is experiencing a change? Again, regardless of what direction that change is. Is it kitchen table issues? Is it, the high cost of what Anna said before, or Look, I said this on the show a couple of weeks ago. Every building that I touch from here, from time to time, I'm hearing things like 7 to 15% increase in maintenance charges per year, which is unheard of by history. Okay, it's unbelievable. So you've got that. You've got kitchen table issues where the cost of everything. I mean, I go to the grocery store and I say this every week, and my hair stands up taller than it is today. I can't even deal with what goes on in the grocery store, okay? And I don't drive a car anymore, so I can't even imagine the cost of gas or whatever.
Right.
What are the economic indicators out there that are really, and again, I use that word hesitation, keeping the buyers from saying, oh, I got to do it, I'm going to do it, I want to do it?
Right. Well, a couple things. I mean, really, when first of all, you're mentioning, mentioning inflation, right? And so that does affect things from like the salary of a doorman to,
Correct.
First of all, taxes always go up, right? So it's just very important for boards to have, very healthy financials, and sometimes they have to increase their maintenance to do that, right? And the majority of times they do. They don't have some type of income-producing asset and use like a commercial space or something below. So the interesting thing is that, yes, the cost of living kind of goes up there, but when you have, again, high rates affecting your debt-to-income ratio, so it becomes just more burdensome to be able to carry that apartment, that place that you're buying. But I think that, one thing that I'm definitely seeing, just to echo what everyone was saying here, is that renovations is my goodness. I think it's the normal average buyer that they don't want to touch it. However, I'm working with so many investors that they're getting crazy spreads. Even some investors that are just taking the risk in saying, look, I don't care if it's a co-op. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to flip it. I had a guy from
But why do you think investors are more likely to do a renovation than the typical end user? Because I'm a little surprised to hear that, actually.
2 reasons. One, because the margins are there, right? They're numbers focused. They're not on emotions, right? So it's not, and as Matt was saying too, people need vision, right? They have to envision what it's like living there. It's more of an emotional thing. Is this thing going to fit my needs, not just the feasibility of it, right? Investors are all about return on cost. That's it. And when you're seeing places, I mean, there's a place right now for sale on Park Avenue. It's asking $1 million less than a place that had sold only a couple of years ago, not even in the hottest markets. $1 million spread is a big number. And it's like, and another example, I did a deal recently also, was a Fifth Ave, little dated co-op, 2-bed, 2-bath. They were asking $1.2 million. We got it for $995,000.
On Fifth Avenue?
On Fifth Ave. The board president, the first thing he said when he met my client, he goes, I want you to know something. I was going to turn you down. He goes, wow. He goes, nice to meet you, Mr. President. He goes, what changed your mind? And he goes, tell your broker. He goes, really don't bring any more buyers in the building. He goes, it was all about the price. And he goes, but I understand it was dated. A lot of people are in downtown or they want renovated product. But he was right. The thing was,
that's hilarious because it's very. I can see that. I can
hear
hear that
as a broker, right?
Right.
I was happy about it. But my point is that there are deals out there, right? So that's the thing, is that if no one's touching that supply, then those prices, like you were saying, you've got to have a price adjustment. And even you said that sometimes you are priced right and still not getting traction.
It's low,
right?
Incentivized.
So when the numbers are there, you're seeing, I have a lot of investors looking at that.
All right, so we are going to take a break. We're coming back, and we're going to put David on the spot to talk about everything finance.
Oh, yeah. Here we go.
You are listening and watching Talking New York Real Estate on the More Network. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
What do you really need to know about buying or selling a home? First, it's serious business, and it's complicated. There's a lot of money on the table, and emotion too. You need an agent who knows the ropes. So, whether you're buying or selling your home, work with professionals who have a mastery of the craft.
Okay, everybody, we are back. So, Mr. David Rodriguez, our financial guru here, my favorite banker. So, let's talk about, we talk about interest rates, but that's part of the issue, okay, of what's happening. Has there been an increase, though, in mortgage application? We'll get to interest rates in a minute, but have you seen an increase in applications or in refinancing these days compared to, say, 3-4 months ago, end of last year?
So first I want to start with, I'm starting a GoFundMe page. This whole elephant in the room. We talk about it every single time I'm here. I'm getting an Equinox freaking thing. Next time you see me, I will be half the size. So
no,
I'm done with this.
It has nothing to do with you.
I'm kidding. Okay, so starting with what we're seeing in terms
Ray and I were talking about this before the show.
So starting with activity, we have seen an uptick in pre-approval. So even this past weekend, so Memorial Day, pretty dead. But this past weekend, everybody was out. We have a quota of what we're trying to get for pre-approvals or introductions in the week. We hit 3/4 of it yesterday, Monday. So weekend was super busy. We're seeing a lot of people, a lot of first-time home buyers get out there. Of them transacting, I'm going to say it's not huge. The pull-through is not massive. But then I'm also finally seeing, on top of first-time home buyers, I'm seeing people that currently own and are looking to buy up. Those are a lot of the calls that we're getting. Now, those are the people that are either...
That's what I'm more concerned with, the people who want to buy up.
Exactly. Now, they don't want to refi, because if they're going to refinance, a lot of them got mortgages in the low 3s or under a couple of years ago, but they're sitting on a ton of equity. So a lot of those people are actually taking out home equity lines right now. Not on co-op, but on condos or their townhouses or their upstate homes or their Hamptons homes. We're seeing a lot of home equity lines, and home equity lines are floating rates. So the rates are not optimal, but when you blend the first mortgage plus the HELOC, it still comes out lower than what regular rates are today. So when you have to get very technical with these buyers, and you have to show them the math in a way, you can't just talk about it, you have to show it to them. And then they say, okay, let's take home, equity out of our current place and then buy the other one. And then the other type of buyer that I'm seeing are people, especially in the tech sector. We've seen enormous amount of appreciation in stock prices. And so a lot of them have had vested or stocks vest, and we're seeing a lot of the tech people actually start pulling money from their accounts and buying. And then people that have a ton of stocks. So we have a client right now at Meta, right? And they have millions of dollars in Meta stock. So they're actually doing lines of credit against their portfolio, because if they sell that stock, they're going to take massive capital gains consequences. So they're actually pulling money from that and buying. So we're seeing it.
I was going to ask you about that, but go ahead.
Yeah,
continue.
you have to get as creative as possible.
Yeah.
And we're now having to pull in accountants. We're having to, so I have to call accountants for the estate transfer within a lifetime, right? So a lot of parents want to give a gift. They only want to give $30,000. And I'm like, no, actually, this child's going to inherit this money. Get the accountant, right? Get it. You can transfer the estate while you're living and avoid the gift tax. So that's one. Two, we're getting financial advisors, like I said, for the trust. For the stocks and things like that. And then three, we're actually tapping into their equity if we have to. So it's become more technical than ever, and the calls are longer than ever, and the amount of work is harder than ever. So
and you're the best at it. But let me drill down a little bit on the tapping into the equity, okay? Because I've been hearing a little bit about that, recently more than ever before. And I think you're right. I think people are thinking about being a little more creative, or their bankers are trying to help them be a little more creative. But let me ask you about the skepticism of the person saying, yeah, but then that's my retirement fund, or that's my 401k, or yeah, the market in general has done well, but I don't know that I want to pull that out because, well, what happens for a rainy day? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes sense, if you want to look at it from an interest rate perspective. But, there's skepticism there, I think, or at least what I'm hearing, about people understanding the creativity of that, but not really comfortable with doing that. Help us understand that a little better.
So this is where you can't just be looking to do a deal. You have to say, all right, what is our long-term, I'm in this for a career, right? So usually if I finance a client once, I'm going to finance them multiple times throughout their lifetime. So I'll look at a client and say, okay, you bought this studio and then you got a 1-bedroom. And now we're in the 1-bedroom and we want to buy a 2-bedroom, right? Because you're having a baby or whatever the case. And I'll say, if you did a home equity line, I know you get bonused out in January. So the time to move is right now because you found a place, whatever. Let's do the home equity line. Let's pull money out. Let's use it for the down payment. And then you can rent out your place. And yeah, you're going to be renting it out, and it's going to barely be breaking even from the rent versus the cost of your departure property. But in January, when you get your bonus, you're going to pay down that home equity line that you originally took out. So they're basically it's like a bridge loan against themselves in one way, shape, form, or the other, right? So you're having to look at a holistic picture and say, okay, yes, you're going to kind of be leveraging something that may feel a little uncomfortable today, but if we have a plan in place for how you're going to pay it down, or if we're talking to your financial advisor, they love to sell stocks at the end of the year, right? So these are things that we can come to a strategy and a solution with quickly.
And how comfortable are the financial advisors in listening to their clients say, well, my mortgage broker says that I should be doing this, or this, or again, being creative and smartly, in my opinion, but I can't imagine the financial advisors are loving that conversation.
Well,
right?
The financial advisor never wants you to liquidate, right? Because
my
what
point.
happens? If you liquidate, the financial advisor makes money off the assets under management.
Correct.
So they actually love us because we're saying, why don't you do a loan against your portfolio and use it for the down payment, and then when they get their bonus or their disbursements or their liquidity event, they can pay off that line. And so that's where, my ultra high net worth clients, people with $5-10 million in their portfolio, they don't ever liquidate. They just do lines of credit against themselves, use it for down payment, then they have their liquidity event, whether it's a bonus or whatever, and then they pay off their line of credit. And so that's how the wealthy keep buying.
Yeah, one of my clients just recently did that on the advice of her financial advisor. Correct. And it's worked out, well for her. All right, that elephant in the room again, the interest rates, nobody else.
Yeah.
Where are we right now, June 4th at 10:30 in the morning?
Okay.
Where are we?
So let's go back a second. Everyone talks about April. Remember how rates ticked up? There was one main factor. So that was the consumer price index came in hot. Inflation was up in April.
Correct.
So we were having a really good ride for rates for a couple weeks, right? Kind of end of March, early April. And then that CPI report came out and boom, shit hit the fan. So then we started getting more data, and we go off of, when we look at mortgage rates, it's priced off of not only the consumer price index, there's the Fed's favorite measure of inflation, which was the PCE, I'm trying to forget. Personal consumer expenditures.
He talks about that all the time. Yeah.
And then we also have the jobs reports, right? So we look at all these levels of data. And so basically we had such a bad month from April to middle of May because all the data was coming in hot, hot, hot. And if you've heard me on the show before, I say if inflation's up, rates are up. Inflation down, rates are down. So that's what happened. And finally, a week and a half ago or 2 weeks ago, we got the consumer price index and it came in light. And so what did I teach? Lighter inflation, rates are coming down. Then we had PCE last week, Fed's favorite measure of inflation, came in light. So everybody is now looking, all eyes are on jobs. Because if people are filing unemployment, if there's less people hiring, we've seen a lot of hiring in the hospitality sector. And again, it's summer, we're going to see a lot of hiring.
Yeah.
So if we see jobs come in lighter than expected, then we'll start seeing rates come down and continue. But it's been a real big battle. I've never seen in my industry that every single piece of data that comes out, I have to watch at 8:30 in the morning. It sucks. My coffee time in the morning, is the worst because it's anxiety driven, right? Because you have to watch every morning, 8:30, there's a new piece of data, and we're like, here's another roller coaster day. So right now we're doing okay. Rates are finally, the national average is under 7 again.
I had my coffee at 7:30 this morning, so I was a little more calm. But go ahead.
We're seeing rates come down a little bit, but what we were anticipating, if you were to have asked me at the beginning of the year, I would have said by fall we are going to see rates close to low 6, potentially under 6. And now I'm like, we'll be lucky to get to 6.25 on, by the end of the year.
And by the way, I've said this on the show several times already this year. I think interest rates are fine. I am old enough to remember when they were 19% and 17%, and my first mortgage rate interest rate was 12%. Okay, so 7% is not so horrible. Okay, not so horrible. We just have to adjust our minds and our thinking to that. But as Anna said before, it's not even, I joke about the elephant in the room of being the interest rate. It's not about the interest rate. It really is about the overall monthlies that have increased, okay?
So
the real estate tax.
What we're doing on that.
Go ahead.
Because this is the big thing. Even if rates went from 7 to 4.5, on a regular first-time home buyer,
there you go.
You're not saving $1,000 a month.
No.
Okay, maybe if you had to take out a $2 million loan, yes, right? But on a regular, call it first-time home buyer in New York is what, 1.2 to 1.5, right? Under that
these days.
And so what I'm telling buyers, first off, what do we say? What are you going to do in 2 years when rates change? When rates come down, what is everyone going to do? They're going to refinance, right?
Of course.
Okay, so we really just need a kind of solution for the next 2 years. So what I'm telling buyers, why are you going in and slashing the price 10% as your offer? You're killing your future value because now you're setting a new comp for that building, and now everyone's going to come in after you at that same price. You're dumb. So here's what you do. If you have comps and you have previous sales in the last 3 months that have closed for the price that it's listed at, but it's not moving, here's an idea. We keep talking incentives. We've talked about the whole first half of the show. Go in and ask for 12. Banks allow you to take up to 12 months of maintenance as a concession. So ask for 12 months of maintenance to be paid for by the seller. And then secondly, ask for your closing costs to be paid for. So now you're getting almost $25,000 to $50,000 of incentives, and you kept your price high. And most importantly, that monthly number that we're all nervous about, you've kept it intact. And I like to use the Espresso Martini inflation report, right? I always said, in 2022, espresso martinis before 2022 it was $18 for espresso martini. It rose to $22, right? And now we're at 24, almost 25 in some places. So people are still drinking, right? People are still going to restaurants.
I'll do my jalapeno martini, okay?
All right,
for $15.
But on the espresso martini inflation report, people are still buying. But they're nervous about these rates. So go in. Now we have to change everybody's mentality and say, let's get 12 months of maintenance paid for by the seller, potentially paying closing costs. And that's how I'm seeing a lot of deals structured that way.
Okay, see, that's near and dear to me because I spent years and years and years selling new development condominiums. And, when things get rough, what do? Concessions, okay? Pay the maintenance, pay closing costs where it makes sense. On the resale side, it's very interesting, okay? But if this is what is going to close deals, then fine. As Anna said before also, buyers are not wowed with the inventory out there. So when they find something that makes sense for them, it's either this is going to work or I continue to look, from not a doomsday and still not find anything. Michael, I think we can all agree here that sellers have had a very challenging past couple of years, okay? We understand inventory is depleted. It's not really regularly out there. And, we can all assume that sellers don't want to sell right now because they want to make money, okay? And as a seller told me yesterday on the phone, and if I had him in front of me, I would have banged the phone receiver on his head. It's all about money, Vince. It's all about the money. I'm like, yeah, no kidding. So, whatever. What is really the challenge for sellers right now?
Well, the thing is, for sellers, I think that their biggest challenge is, first of all, I think you're right. Like it just depends who the seller is, right? If the seller needs a liquidity, I think they're going to be more apt to listen and take advice on where we suggest pricing. I think that comes to reality. And there's a lot of sellers that are like, sellers' biggest fear is that they're leaving money on the table. They never want to leave $1, okay?
Or my neighbor got $100,000 more 4 years ago than you're telling me I can get today.
The 4 years ago is the best one.
So, and then that's the thing. And then when you're talking about strategy and pricing strategy, because pricing strategy is a real thing regardless of what market you're in. Exactly. If the market's hot, you're pricing ahead. If the market's down, you're pricing a little bit down.
100%.
Right, you got to be a little bit strategic there. Mm-hmm. And so having that conversation, and now in today's environment, this strategy is certainly being awarded for those to be priced right or a little bit better. So I feel that some of those sellers are having problems with that. Or as Matt was saying, it's like renovations, like especially unless they're the investor client, which is not majority, they want that. It's got to be turnkey or close to it, or at least have some vision on how it's going to look. So he had a brilliant idea going in there, took it over from 3 brokers, and made it presentable enough to where someone's going to go in there and they bought it. So I think it's having the right, and they had to invest. They had to invest, like, what'd you say, 40,000?
Yeah, we didn't got the place at all. We literally just put paint, floors, furniture.
Cosmetic.
That's it.
Yeah, all
cosmetic and
We
staging.
even peel and stick tiles on the floor of it in the kitchen of a Fifth Avenue apartment.
Right.
Right. I mean, it looked really nice, and they walked in and said, "I can work with this." Yeah. It wasn't, "Oh my God, I'm
the
gonna have to do
visual
so much."
when somebody walks in. That's really all it is.
It's more it's just more important than ever, and I feel like a lot of sellers have trouble with that. And there's an interesting thing that we call the climate index, is what's one of my favorite things.
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah, I looked it up.
Wait if you
No. Go tell me. I looked it up while I looked it up while. No. It's right here while we were on break. Tell us about that because I'm intrigued by that.
So it's I like this one. So basically what the climate index is, it's a ratio. And that ratio, and what that is, it is the amount of signed contracts versus the amount of listings that are being taken off the market. Mm-hmm. Okay. So if that number goes up,
listings taken off the market because they're not selling.
Right.
Okay.
So that's the climate. If more listings are coming off the market than those that are being signed under contract, it's obvious that the market is cool, right? So that's what we call the climate. That's where we are today. So, makes sense?
It makes total sense.
I actually have a bunch of sponsors selling co-ops, and they're in a state condition, like missing kitchens, things like that. And I'm like, listen, I have 2 routes. I can do the slow route and do a renovation loan with the client, or you can put in a kitchen. It literally just has to be habitable. Working kitchen, a busted cabinet, I don't care. It just has to be hanging on the wall, patch the holes. And I don't care if there's avocado green carpet and whatever, the bank, as long as it's habitable.
I like avocado green.
It's such a great color.
But I'm telling
my parents had avocado green appliances when I was growing up. Unbelievable.
But if you think about it, I'm telling these sponsors this. I'm like, just do this one tweak. It'll cost you very little money, and the sponsors are coming, and right before the appraisal, they're putting in the kitchens, the ovens, the refrigerators. They're doing the minor work so that it'll pass an appraisal, and they can close that deal faster. And it's helping because even though they know our buyer's going to renovate it to what they want, but they don't want to have to sit through the renovation process, and we have to get consultants involved. It gets very lengthy to do a renovation loan. And so the clients, we talk to the sponsors, they fix the kitchens and they add these things, and then boom, we're able to do a regular mortgage. And it just took all the guesswork out of it. And also getting incentives for closing costs, right? So we've seen a lot of that happen. Even in Clinton Hill, all the way, and there's a lot of sponsor sales for co-ops over there. I have one right now, Park Avenue on the Upper East Side, that we're doing. We told them to put a kitchen in. I can't believe this is happening right now. I've not seen it in my career.
On Park Avenue, put a kitchen in.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're like, okay. So.
Sure.
Yeah.
Not a problem. we talk about recovery, okay, and who knows if we are in recovery, or we're about to recover, or we have recovered. I mean, it's just like people want to say we're in inflation,
We have not
definitely, but
recovered.
we're in recession. I mean, everybody's got a comment about everything. As I said at the top of the show, it's really all about everyone's opinion. I don't think we're in recovery at the moment. But Anna, you mentioned, all of you did actually, but you mentioned earlier about pricing right. The pricing strategy should be, my opinion, and I think Michael said this before, maybe a little under
Yes.
value, because then you get a lot of attention, you get a lot of visitation,
Yeah.
and a lot of feet on the street who are looking at that property. And whether, an agent has to do what Matt did before and, suggest a little cosmetic update, you're going to get feet on the street coming in. How do you get people to buy into or to believe your pricing strategy when they're not really going to say, I don't know about that, I've had sellers say to me, but Vince, that's under what I could really get. I'm like, no kidding.
How do I get sellers to buy into my
Sellers.
pricing strategy? First of all, we're now at a point in history where we've got months and months and months of anecdotes where we can go back and say, this is what's been happening. This is how erratic the market is. We're not at the start of this, where we're coming from, where it was a seller's market. We are not in a seller's market. It's just not. And we have a lot of history that we can talk to them about and say, look, if we don't price where these numbers are basically balanced out for that particular building, then this is what's going to happen because it's been happening. And we have that history now. So if they're not willing to listen, they're going to find out the hard way. And unfortunately, we're going to be stuck with something that's just counting days on the market.
And counting days on the market, we're going to do a show on that coming up. One of my semi-regular guests wrote an article recently about days on market and really what that means.
And that's,
right? You know who that is, right? Maybe.
And
But it's true.
It's true,
right?
and that's the days on the market is a very, very powerful tool.
100%.
When you have an apples-to-apples comp, especially something within a building, depending on the size of the building, if you can use that, something that's priced properly and it stays on for fewer days than something that has been trickling down and it's been on for 257 days, that speaks volumes, especially when you add in those anecdotes
Absolutely.
of the last 18 to 24 months.
Can I just dovetail off that for one
Please
second?
do,
So I think one extra sort of element I add when I'm approaching a seller and I know that this is the right price to list at, and they're 3, sometimes 7, 8% higher than that because that's what sold their neighbor's apartment sold for that 4 years ago.
There's that number, 4 years
the global
ago.
pandemic, before the quote unquote recession fear started, before the inflation, but everyone forgets all of those details. What I like to do is not only show this is what this recently sold for, but I go through a history where I say original ask.
This is when you're talking to sellers.
Yeah, when I'm talking to sellers.
Yeah,
Original ask.
Yeah.
Here's how many price adjustments were done over X number of months, years, what have you. And not only that, when
Correct.
it hit the price that it locked in a deal, how long did it take? So I show them not only was this the last ask, but if you look at the trends, yes, there was an apartment that sold for $2.6 million that was asking $2.8, but it sat for 160 days, whereas you see the ones that sold for $2.6 million when they were priced at $2.6 million were gone at full ask in less than a month.
And you can also see by
It's
the days
it's
on the market.
unbelievable how,
It sounds so simple, right?
it's unbelievable how simple it is, but how people look at that stat of days on market and freak out if
But
it's
it's not total days. It's days following the last adjustment that led to the contract.
That-
that's
that-
the one
Yes,
that's
that's
important,
the
and that's the
number.
one that no one looks at.
well, of course not. Absolutely not.
And also, you can
Thank
tell
you,
if
Street
something
Easy.
is priced. If something is priced properly, the days on the market can also indicate whether they got, if they're in contract and haven't closed yet, whether they got close to ask or potentially over. Because if something's going into contract within 15 days or 10 days, more than likely there was a lot of activity on it. Nobody's going, that aggressively. Anything that goes on the market initially is not as negotiable, as we all know. It has to kind of sit, and the sellers need to be worn down for it to become more and more negotiable. So something that goes into contract quickly, is going to be going close to that price. If not, maybe there's a lot of activity on it.
That's exactly right. There's a certainly correlation between the discount to days on market.
100%.
It's huge. And anything that's selling or getting a contract accepted offer under 30 days is within usually usually 3%.
Exactly. And that's where the buyer, good buyer and a
3%,
good
yeah.
agent guiding that buyer, that's where the deals are. The longer something's been sitting on the market, it's there's something wrong with it, still exists. I mean, it's insane how strong that feeling is when something's just been sitting on the market, and those are the best deals.
And that goes back to your hesitation comment, right? And like we're seeing that left and right, and they're like, I get the email, like, what's wrong with this unit? That's what they're asking. Like, is there, and I have to, and then I start looking up, and I'm like, oh, there's local law 11, or there's an assessment.
When
or,
I hear that,
you know?
what's wrong with this? My head goes up. Anyway, we have to take a very quick break. No one's going anywhere. We're coming right back. This is Talking New York Real Estate on the More Network. We are back. Let's continue our conversation.
All right.
Go ahead.
I'll save it.
No, say,
But
do it.
Just to dovetail off of what was said earlier about creative concessions, a lot of buyers, especially out-of-town buyers,
Yeah,
that are coming
absolutely.
to New York for the first time. For example, they don't know what a SEMA is, and they're freaking out over the extreme.
The purchase SEMA
closing
is
costs
important.
in New York City, and they don't realize that if a seller, let's say they bought an apartment, had a couple kids,
Yeah.
need to move out of the city, they're carrying a massive balance because they've only owned the apartment for 3 or 4 years. New buyer coming in, highly leveraged. They're taking out a massive loan. They're freaking out about the monthlies because rates are way more than when they started looking in 2021, and everyone was telling them the market was going to crash. But then they can basically effectively net it and pay virtually no mortgage recording tax. It saves them 1.925% of God knows how much money. That's one. Two, they're so hyper focused on, I got to get the price down. I got to get the price down. I got to get the price down. Instead, lock in a little bit of a higher price, ask for a closing credit, pay down your rate, and then you don't have to be so worried about when can I refinance. It becomes less of an anxiety for you, at least in the near term, until rates do finally cool off.
What do they say? I think you've said it the first time I heard it on my show is, buy the apartment, date the rate. Okay?
Date the rate, marry the house. Yeah.
I
whatever it
actually
is.
hate that saying,
hate it.
but
But the
but it makes
point
sense.
is though that you can refinance
Right.
at some point.
And it's not just a relationship discount. It's not just give me $1 million and
Correct.
I'll give you a point off your loan. There are so many different programs that every lender is trying to come up with to satisfy these new workarounds in the market that we're in right now, because a lot of buyers are just skeptical and skittish because they don't know what's going to happen next week. The market changes every week.
Right, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. So, Anna, I asked a question about the sellers, okay, and strategic pricing for sellers, whatever. Let's say you're representing buyers at the moment, and you're out there, you're showing. They're hesitating, okay? They don't know what they should do. They see something, maybe they think it's overpriced, maybe they think it's a little more negotiable. Maybe there are concessions that I could have. How do you strategically, frame for your buyer the thought that let's work this, let's get this to where you are comfortable? My favorite expression in this business has always been, if you can put your head on the pillow at night after you decide to make an offer and after you decide to buy something and feel comfortable that you did the right thing, then you did the right thing. So keep still and move on. When you're still out there with them, though, how do you accomplish that sense of, we'll work the price, we'll get it to where we want it to be if we can, especially when you know or feel that the seller is a little off, and you need to communicate that. Somebody said education before, right? How do you get them to understand that?
I think it's two extremes, because on one hand, in this market, you're dealing with, as Anna mentioned, a hot property, priced right, good neighborhood. It's going to go over, and buyers are in this headspace where the news is telling them it's a buyer's market, nothing's selling. Oh my God, rates are through the roof, everyone's freaking out. So they are hesitant to bid over ask. So on that extreme, part of my strategy is to go in and say, look, there's a difference between list price and fair market value. Here's what they're asking. Here's what I think it's worth. Here's why I think that, like data, math, numbers. And what do you feel comfortable paying somewhere in between? So that we know if they walk in and they say, have to have it, there's a limit where, as like a good
That's my
real estate
expression, have to
professional,
have
it's
it.
not
I always
about-
have to have it.
Yeah, it's not about the deal. It's about the relationship. You say,
Correct.
I'm going to tell you to walk away. I don't want you to overpay for this apartment, because in 4 years, when life happens and you call me and say, Matt, I need to sell this, I can't sell it and then you lose money and then it's my fault at the end of the day. So that's one side. The other side is when you're dealing with a buyer who's looking at something like, what's wrong with it? Why has it been on the market for 250 days? Why have they cut the price 8 different times?
I just love that.
I normally go through the history of the listing and other listings in the building or other brokers that have had it before, you examine the pictures, those broker tricks that ain't so slick, like, they're, covering a window or they're not showing something, they're purposely not showing one bathroom. Yeah. And I'll be able to show up to the showing and say, look, I haven't been in the apartment personally, here's my take. This needs work, this bathroom is gonna be an absolute disaster because it's not photographed. Here's something wonky about this floor plan. I personally don't like how this faces. And then they already have their expectations set going in, but I say, but if you do X, Y, and Z, look what this other apartment next door had sold for, or look what this apartment 2 floors lower sold for. There's potential here. I would call it arbitrage, because you're basically taking advantage of other people misperceiving the apartment the way that it's being packaged and marketed. And you're able to see past it and then see the potential and capitalize on it.
Listen, I've always said, and I've said this for years as well, it's all about communications, okay? It's all the way about the way you communicate with your buyer or your seller. As I teach in real estate school all the time, you've got to be credible, you've got to be trustworthy. They have to have faith in what you're telling them is the truth. And I agree with you, Matt, because that, give them the data, give them, the facts, tell them what it is, and hey, they have to make the decision. We all know that. But if they are armed with the right information, hopefully they get there.
Oftentimes, and this goes back to communication that you just mentioned, yes, you have to communicate with your buyers and your sellers. You've got to communicate with the other agents. That is where you're going to get, everybody is looking to do a deal. Anyone you call and say, this has been on for so long, what's been going on? Have you had offers? Have you had offers go south? Have you presented anything to the seller that they've countered? Have they given any indication of kind of where they're looking to transact? Every agent right now is looking to get rid of their properties, get rid of their inventory. They will give you the information that you need. That is so powerful to be
more
able
so
to,
now than
to
ever.
analyze all of that information. But then to also have that conversation and then go back to your buyer and seller and say, I looked at this, I called the agent, I talked to the agent for this particular comp, this is what's going on, this is why we have to price X, Y, Z. To the buyer, I talked to this agent, she told me, if you want to try a low offer, 200 off the ask, go for it, let's give it a shot. They will know, the numbers will tell you a lot, but not everything. Having that conversation with the other agent is gold.
And you're so right, more so now, as I said before, than ever. Yes. They're willing to give you that information. In the past, good luck. Okay.
And I think the old school mentality of like, here's a pre-approval, right, good luck.
Right.
That's not working. So on all my clients, again, first-time home buyers under 1.5, every deal that they're putting an offer on right now is bid over ask. And so every single pre-approval I send out now, I say, if with your authorization, give your agent the authorization for me to speak to the selling agent. And I'm putting on that eye cream, I am getting on Zoom, and I'm going to the selling agent, and I'm saying, hi, my name is David Rodriguez from loanDepot. Their credit's phenomenal. Their debt-to-income ratio is 20%. Their post-closing reserves are at 30 months. And on top of that, I have the building approved, or I see that there's an assessment, let's get in front of it. And then finally, appraisal, they're putting 30% down. We have a lot of room. And the reason I do that is so they can go in front of their seller and say, already spoke to their banker, they're locally based, they know what the hell they're doing, their team's going to get this done in 30 days or less on commitment. And that's the pairing that a lot of the agents need. Again, you mentioned like talk communication. Well, it's also teaming up with people, having your attorney, like I'm seeing the deals that are successful right now. It is a full force, like, I joke, it's like the Emirates crew walking through the airport. They just look gorgeous, and it is like the hat and the scarf. They look expensive, and that is what I want my clients to look like. I want there to be a formation of us walking in with an offer, and it just slays. And that's what's required right now.
All right, let me ask you, okay? So.
Sorry.
I have Beyonce in my head.
You know I want that hat.
That's David Rodriguez, everybody, okay? My man, David. All right, so let me ask you this. What are you seeing trend-wise on the buyer application side? What price points are selling more right now than not?
So
overall,
I'm seeing two specific points. So it's like the 1-1 space. I'm convincing the buyers, like, stop looking at 999 and under. Yeah. Go to 1-1 and 1050 because I'm telling them to do that. And if it is a 30-day listing, have the seller pay for that mansion tax or that you don't want to pay for it. It's 10 to 15 grand. The seller's going to pay for it. So that's one market. And then surprisingly, I'm getting a lot of multi-family offers. So people are going out to Brooklyn. They need the space. They want a tenant, right? And I'm seeing a lot of that. And we just had one a 2-something, Bushwick townhouse, and the seller's paying $45K of the buyer's closing cost.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
And there's programs
That's
out
big.
there. It's
That's big.
huge. And then there's programs out there where you can even put 80% mortgage and 10% HELOC for those people that are having, a little bit of trouble coming up with the down payment. They don't have mommy daddy money or the bank of mom and dad, and so they're able to put down 10%. They're getting concessions from the seller because a lot of developers have flipped those products and they just want to get rid of it. And they're paying the price. So I'm seeing kind of two different markets, right? In the city, Brooklyn, that 1-1 kind of sweet spot, and then I'm seeing the 2+, the townhouses that are happening in Brooklyn as well.
Michael, I started with you, and I'm going to give you the last question. And I've been asking this question for weeks now. What
boy.
particular neighborhoods are hotter than not? What is selling faster than not?
Okay.
And where can you get, I hate to use the word deal, but where can you get the better or the best deal based on what all of these guys have said with concessions, with pricing, with whatever?
Sure. Well, I mean, so most of my business is in Manhattan, so I can't speak to Brooklyn as much, although we all know that Park Slope is always just hot and it's just always in really big demand. But when it comes to Manhattan, so I have a lot of buyers that are generally looking on both sides of the park, Upper East, Upper West, constantly. It's just never ending. And then you get West Village, but it's so hard with the inventory there. So I think that when it comes to deals, though, when it comes to nice discounts,
Love that word, deals.
yeah, I honestly, the majority of them that we've been doing have been on the Upper East Side, but again, they've also,
I knew you were going to say that.
but they've also been more of the dated product as well. So also, right?
Post-war.
Dated product being, yeah, okay, thank you.
Well, dated. I'm sorry, dated as in like not updated or renovated, like a little bit old or needs some little bit of work, right? So those things I think are getting the best deals. But also, as you said, Anna, it's days on market, right? So those things that have been sitting for a little bit, they're sitting for a while. Those are getting some of the better deals. But like we've all been saying, and buyers going to wonder, especially if they're going to be living there and it's an end user. They're like, hey, why has this one been sitting so long? What's wrong with it? That's that question that they ask. But generally, those are getting better deals. So,
Do you find now on the Upper East Side, we have time for another question, do you find on the Upper East Side now more than ever that because of the Q line or the Second Avenue subway
Right.
line, that you're getting more interest?
Game changer.
Game changer.
Absolute game changer.
Yeah.
That, like, I've sold a lot in a building on 88th between First and York. Pre-Q train, that was no man's land. You had a very, very long, cold walk to the 6th on 86th Street. In
I did it for
January.
years,
It was
cold
not
and
enjoyable.
freezing.
And not to mention I grew up in the city. I remember when they started building that. The amount of construction and debris and noise and all the storefronts vacating, Second Avenue was a wasteland.
Wasteland.
It was horrible. I mean, that's when you got a great deal, let me tell you.
Oh,
But
100%.
You had to live through 10 years
Yeah.
of absolute torture. Now that if you can be on 88th and York and you can get to Midtown in less than 25 minutes,
great.
it's incredible.
yeah, it's
I
But
was
most people don't even know about it.
I-
They don't realize it yet because they're still stuck in that pre-Q train
Well,
world.
and again, based on education, based on communications, based on a lot of the things we said here, this is how we educate our buyers. I lived there too. I lived on 2nd Avenue, 72nd Street, between 2nd and 3rd, right on the corner of 2nd. And, I used to walk to the 6th train on, 68th Street in Lexington. On a cold winter morning, it was like, really?
Yeah.
Okay. And then have to stand down there and wait 6 times before I can get on a train because it was so stuffed. Okay. And I was going to work down on the Wall Street area at the time, and it was like, I got to go to work. Leave me. That's when I moved to the West Side. But I happened to be selling a new development on 2nd Avenue and 61st Street a bunch of years ago, just before the Q line, the 2nd Avenue line opened. And while I was in the process of selling, slow, was like no man's land. The minute that subway line opened, oh my God.
yeah.
Done. Finished.
Right. And
People from all over the place were coming.
I mean, it was also done on purpose, but look what the 2nd train
Well,
extension did for Hudson Yards.
of
And
course.
I'm not talking about
They
the
still
high
need to go to
price.
the 40s. It was supposed to go to West
I know.
40-something
They
Street, and
need
they
to,
didn't
they
do
need
it.
to finish what they started. I agree because I used to live on 37th and 10th, but
Correct.
it's not just the multi-billion-dollar complex. It's those really cool loft buildings around Hudson
Yes.
Yards. Those
Yeah.
now are, it's so convenient.
Yeah.
And most people, again, it's education because people think, oh, 35th and 10th, why would I ever want to live there?
Bart
But once
Premium
they're-
just opened in Moynihan. It's gorgeous.
It's gorgeous.
Like,
Some really
it's
neat
insane.
product
I think
over there.
Isn't that something?
What are they calling the new pen? I think that
Yeah.
that is going to. It's going to take a while, but
The
it's
new
it's gonna take
everything,
long.
the
new
new
everything.
pen, the new this, the new that. But you're
Well,
right.
it's
I
New
have to-
York. Everything's new.
Everything is new. Okay, Michael, David, Anna, Matt. Oh my God, great show. We're coming right back with my thoughts for the week. Don't go anywhere. Okay, everybody, my closing thoughts for the week. I've lived in New York City for nearly 30 years, and in that time, I've called 5 neighborhoods. That's right, 5 neighborhoods home. So, some have felt more like home than others. The Upper West Side, where I currently live now, is probably my favorite of all, at least for now, for what I need. A decent grocery store, some mom and pop businesses, access to trains, the parks. I had a dog for years, the parks are perfect, and the West Side Highway, and all within walking distance from my apartment. But oftentimes when we work with buyers or renters, they aren't so sure what neighborhood works best for them. These are the calculations that many New Yorkers end up making when choosing where to live. Do I want space? Do I want to be surrounded by people? Do I want to be close to a park? How important is it to be close to a park? Can I really live with just one subway line? Well, that's improved in some neighborhoods through the years, as we just talked about. And how much is all this going to cost me? In a city where many households are rent burdened or people are paying very high purchase prices, that is often the only factor that is considered when picking a place to live. For new New Yorkers, this may sound overwhelming, and even if you have the means to afford to live wherever you want, there will be trade-offs. Trade-offs is our business, and we are going to discuss that and so much more in a future broadcast. So that's our broadcast for today. Thanks to my guests for being here on set with me. You can follow me on Facebook, on Threads, Instagram, LinkedIn, or TikTok at Vince Rocco, or my website, thinkvince.com. Norman Vincent Peale says, shoot for the moon, everyone. Even if you miss, Ray, you'll land among the stars. And from all of us here at Talking New York Real Estate and the More Network, to all of you all around the world, thanks for spending a part of your day with us, and I will see you next time. Goodbye, everybody. And one more thought. Happy Pride to all of my fellow members out there in our community in New York City. Bye-bye.